Welcome to HFY Beyond Terra, where humanity doesn't just survive, it becomes the galaxy's biggest surprise. Subscribe, and let's go beyond Terra.
The first time I met HFY, she claimed me in front of a room full of razor-toothed diplomats. Not quietly, either. One moment I was standing near the refreshment table, trying to look like I belonged at the Interstellar Cultural Exchange Gala. And the next, she was pointing at me with a long, blue-green finger and saying clear as a bell in perfectly accented trade common, "This is my husband." Then she smiled. It wasn't a sweet smile, or a shy one. It was the kind of smile a starship captain gives when the enemy realizes they've flown into a minefield. Every head in the hall swiveled my way. A dozen species whose social customs I had spent 6 weeks cramming into my skull, some of which considered I. Contact a marriage proposal suddenly focused on the one thing I hadn't rehearsed, me. I did what any well-trained human envoy would do in a crisis. I choked on my drink. Kessa crossed the polished floor like she owned gravity, her gown shimmering with bioluminescent thread that rippled faintly with her heartbeat. She was taller than me by a few centimeters, with narrow shoulders and a long neck bearing a thin silver collar marked with tiny etched symbols. Her eyes were a deep black that reflected light like wet stone, and her hair, if you could call it hair, was a cascade of fine tendrils braided close to her scalp, tipped in pale gold. She stepped into my personal space and slid one arm around my waist like she'd practiced it in a mirror. "I'm sorry," I managed, voice cracking. "I think you've got the wrong." "Quiet," she whispered through the smile, lips barely moving. "If you correct me, you will die." My heart did a brief impression of a malfunctioning engine. "Excuse me?" Her fingers tightened just a little, not enough to hurt, just enough to make a point. "You are now my husband. Please try to look supportive." I stared at her, then at the nearest cluster of onlookers. A pair of insectoid delegates were whispering urgently, mandibles clicking. A bulky armored creature with 4 eyes narrowed, and I could have sworn one of them winked shut like a targeting reticle. And then there was Counselor Marrow, the senior Terran representative, on the far side of the room. His face had gone pale in the way only a man who's watched too many international incidents unfold could manage. He gave me a subtle thumbs up, traitor. Kessa leaned in, still smiling broadly to the crowd. "You are human, yes?" "Yes," I whispered back. "Excellent. Humans are difficult to intimidate." "That's flattering." "It is a survival requirement." Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes flicked across the room with swift calculations. "Now, place your hand here." She guided my palm to the center of her back where the dress dipped low. Her skin was cool and faintly textured, like polished wood. I froze. "This is really not in the training manual." "It is in mine," she murmured. "Now lean closer and pretend you adore me." I did, because the words "you will die" have a way of sharpening the mind. As I leaned, she hissed through her teeth, "There is a duel scheduled in 7 minutes." "A duel?" I repeated, because my brain was trying to make sense of it like it was a sentence on a grammar test. "Yes, for me." My stomach fell. "For you as in?" "Your Honor?" "For me as in ownership." Her smile twitched wider when someone applauded. "My species, Veari, has an ancient tradition. When a Veari enters a formal gathering, they may be claimed by a challenger of higher status. If the challenger wins, the Veari becomes their bonded asset." I blinked hard. Bonded asset sounds like slavery, yes. Her eyes flashed. "We have complications with the concept of consent." "I am attempting to be uncomplicated." I swallowed. "And declaring me your husband stops that?" "It does," she said. "Under treaty law, a Veari legally bonded to an allied species cannot be claimed without triggering diplomatic sanctions." I exhaled slowly. "So you picked?" Me. I picked the nearest human who looked like he could survive being yelled at. That's me, I said, deadpan. Famous for it? Her eyes cut sideways. Also, you have kind eyes. That threw me, just for a heartbeat. Then the hall shifted again, attention pulling toward the entrance. A new figure strode in, massive, plated, and decorated with a sash of bone-white medallions. He moved with the assured gait of someone who had never been told no and hadn't had to learn what it meant. Several delegates stepped back instinctively. Kessa's grip on my waist tightened. That is Lord Retainer Rax Vum. He spotted us immediately. His 4 eyes narrowed, then widened slightly surprise, then irritation. He advanced with heavy steps that made the floor vibrate, trailing 2 attendants who looked like they existed solely to carry his ego. He stopped a meter away, towering over both of us. His voice was deep, resonant, and tuned for public performance. Kesave, he rumbled, you stand under my sponsorship. You are scheduled to answer my claim. Kessa's smile never moved. I am already bonded, Lord Retainer. Rax's eyes shifted to me as though he just noticed a stain on a wall. This one? I tried to breathe. Try was the key word. Yes, Kessa said brightly. This is my husband. Rax's lower jaw plates flexed, an equivalent of a sneer. A human functionary. An unranked, soft-bodied primate. Hey, I said, because my mouth apparently wanted to be punched. Some of us are ranked. By what? Rax asked, amused. Hair density? A few snickers rippled through nearby delegates. Counselor Marrow was making a face like someone watching a slow-motion car crash. Kessa leaned closer, whispering, Do not antagonize him. I whispered back, He antagonized me first. She made a tiny sound, not quite a laugh. Fine, antagonize him carefully. Rax turned his attention back to Kessa. Your claim is invalid, he said. Bonding requires formal declarations filed with the conclave. You have none. I have him, Kessa replied, squeezing my side, and the human legal system is delightfully messy. A verbal declaration in public witnessed by conclave delegates carries weight. Rax's gaze bored into mine. Then I challenge him. My lungs stopped. You challenge me to trial by dominion, Rax said, voice carrying so the whole hall could hear. If I prove he cannot protect you, your bond is forfeit. Kessa's fingers went cold against my skin. Counselor Marrow finally moved, stepping forward. Lord Retainer Rax, Terran citizens do not participate in. Rax lifted one massive hand. The treaty allows it, he said calmly. Allied species may prove worthiness by their own methods. If humans refuse, they admit weakness and the Viari bond is void. Marrow's mouth opened, then shut. He glanced at me, eyes pleading, don't do this. And also we might be doomed if you don't. Kessa's smile flickered at last, just a crack. She whispered, so softly I almost didn't hear, If you refuse, he will claim me. If you accept and lose, he will claim me. If you accept and win, you live, I whispered. She looked at me then, really looked not like a chess piece or a shield, but like a person stranded in a bad universe trying to find a door that wasn't locked. If you accept and win, she said, I am free. My brain screamed a dozen sensible objections. I was a cultural liaison, not a soldier. My greatest combat experience was wrestling a suitcase into an overhead compartment. Rax looked like he could bench press my childhood home. But the hall felt suddenly smaller, crowded with watchers and rules and ancient traditions that didn't care what my job title was. And Kessa's hand on my waist trembled, just once. So I did something I'd done on Earth 100 times, in boardrooms and negotiation chambers and at Thanksgiving dinners with relatives who thought yelling was a love language. I smiled. Okay, I said, loud enough to carry. I accept. The hall erupted into a murmur. Rax's attendants thumped their staffs in approval. Counselor Merrill looked like he was about to faint. Kessa's eyes widened at me, shock turning quickly into something like hope. Rax leaned close, breath smelling faintly of metal and fermented spice. Bold. Tell me, human, what weapons do you carry? I patted my pockets theatrically. A pen, some mints. Crushing student loan debt. You know, the classics. A few laughs, nervous, startled, broke out. Even one of Rax's attendants made a clicking sound that might have been amusement. Rax's eyes narrowed. You will face me on the proving floor. Kessa's fingers slid down to clasp my hand as he turned away. Her touch was light but urgent. Human, she whispered. Eli, I blinked. You know my name? I asked your badge earlier, she said. Eli Mercer. Listen to me. Trial by Dominion is not just hitting. It is proving superiority in any agreed arena. Strength, strategy, endurance, influence, even. Story. Story? She nodded rapidly. The conclave allows flexibility. The challenger chooses the first arena. The defender chooses the second. Best of three. My mind latched onto the only lifeline available. So Rax will choose something physical. Yes, and I choose something else. Kessa's mouth curved, small and real. Humans are dangerous in something else. That is why I chose you. We were escorted to the proving floor. A circular platform recessed into the ballroom like someone had installed a gladiator pit in the middle of diplomacy. A shimmering barrier rose around it, transparent, faintly humming. Delegates filled the surrounding tiers, the air thick with anticipation and the perfume of alien flowers. A conclave adjudicator floated above the ring, a pale jellyfish-like being whose voice echoed from hidden speakers. Trial by Dominion will commence, it intoned. Challenger, Lord Retainer Rax Vum. Defender, Eli Mercer of Terra, bonded to Kesave of Vair. Arena 1 shall be chosen by the challenger. Rax stepped into the ring. The floor. Flexed slightly under his weight. He turned in a slow circle so everyone could admire him, armor plates polished, medallions gleaming. I choose, Rax declared, the arena of grip. Panels rose from the ring floor, forming a waist-high block between us. From it emerged two thick handles, like a barbaric arm wrestling rig. Of course, the adjudicator chimed. Arena 1, grip dominance. Rules, single limb engagement. No lethal force. First to force opponent's limb to contact surface or cause surrender wins. Rax planted himself, one elbow on the block, massive hand wrapped around the handle. Another handle extended toward me. My palms went damp. Kessa stood outside the barrier, hands clenched at her chest. She met my eyes and mouthed something. Breathe. I stepped up, wrapped my hand around the handle. It was enormous, designed for a creature with bones like cables. My fingers barely closed around it. Rax's grin was all teeth plates. You may surrender, he said, and I will end it quickly. Tempting, I said. But my wife would be mad. The adjudicator's voice rang. Begin. Rax squeezed. Pain shot up my arm like a live wire. The handle bit into my palm. My elbow trembled. The world narrowed to pressure and the slow, awful tilt of my wrist. He wasn't even leaning yet. I gritted my teeth, tried to hold, tried to anchor my shoulder, but his strength was obscene. My hand began to descend, millimeter by millimeter, toward the surface. The crowd roared with every shift. My vision sparkled at the edges. And then, because my brain does this in emergencies, my mind flashed to something my old boxing coach had once said in a crumbling gym back on Earth. You don't beat stronger people by being stronger. You beat them by being smarter about where strength matters. I didn't have to win this round. I just had to not get injured. So I did the only thing I could. I let my hand fall. Rax slammed my knuckles to the surface with a triumphant thud. The barrier hummed louder as the crowd cheered. Arena 1, Challenger victory, the adjudicator declared. Rax released me and raised his arm to the audience, soaking in the noise. Now, he called, voice booming, your bond weakens. Your protector fails. I shook my hand out, flexing fingers that felt like they'd been compressed in a hydraulic press. Kessa stared at me through the barrier, eyes wide with panic. I lifted my bruised hand and gave her a small, steady nod. 1 down, 2 to go. The adjudicator's voice returned. Arena 2 shall be chosen by the defender. I drew a breath, slow and deliberate. Okay, I said, raising my voice. My arena is negotiation. Rax blinked. That is not an arena. It is the human arena, I said, and it is recognized under conclave flexibility, influence, and terms. The goal is simple. In 10 minutes, we each propose a binding agreement acceptable to the adjudicator. If one of us cannot, they lose the round. The hall quieted, the way it does when violence pauses and people realize words are also weapons. The adjudicator's tendrils fluttered. Arena 2, binding negotiation. Conditions. Proposals must be enforceable under conclave law and not violate existing treaties. Failure to produce acceptable proposal within allotted time constitutes defeat. Rax's eyes narrowed. You think yourself clever. I think I'm employed, I said. This is literally my job. A timer lit on the ring's edge. I turned slightly, as if addressing the adjudicator, but really speaking to the crowd. Lord Retainer Rax's claim hinges on proving I cannot protect Kessa, I said. But protection isn't just physical. It's legal, economic, political. Rax snorted. Words do not stop blades. Sure, I said, but they stop armies. I held up my badge. I am an official Terran liaison. If my bond to Kessa is recognized, she gains asylum status under Terran protection. That's treaty compliant. Rax's posture stiffened. He could smell the trap, but didn't know where it was. My proposal, I said, is this. Kessa becomes a protected cultural exchange partner of Terra for a period of 5 Terran years. During that time, any attempt to claim her triggers immediate sanctions under the Interstellar Labor Rights Accord and the non-coercive personhood statutes. Murmurs spread. Some delegates leaned forward. Rax barked a laugh. You cannot impose sanctions unilaterally. No, I agreed. But the conclave can, if it recognizes the asylum bond. And I'm guessing a lot of species here are tired of bonded assets being traded like furniture. I didn't look at Kessa, but I felt her hope like heat. Rax's eyes darted around the hall. He was reading the room the same way I was counting all eyes, measuring appetite for conflict. The timer ticked. He snarled, My proposal is simple. The human surrenders the bond. Kessa returns to my sponsorship, and I will... The adjudicator's voice cut in, smooth and merciless. Proposal must not violate non-coercive personhood statutes. Return to sponsorship implies involuntary bond. Unacceptable. Rax's jaw plates flared. He tried again, faster. She enters my household as honored. Unacceptable, the adjudicator repeated. The crowd's murmurs shifted, some sounding like approval. Rax's eyes went sharp, furious, and for the first time he looked. Cornered, he turned to me, voice low. You are manipulating the crowd. I'm inviting them, I said. Big difference. He tried to craft something else, but every version still smelled like ownership. The adjudicator rejected them one by one, calm as a tax auditor. The timer hit 0. Arena 2. Defender victory, the adjudicator declared. The hall erupted, some cheering, some outraged, but loud enough that the sound shook the barrier. Rax stared at me as if I'd struck him. "You think you have won," he hissed. "Not yet," I said, my bruised hand still throbbing. "One more." The adjudicator floated higher. Arena 3 will be chosen by the challenger, unless both parties agree otherwise. Rax drew himself up, fury hardened into focus. "I choose endurance," he said. "A pain trial." A collective inhale rippled through the audience. Kessa's face drained of color. "No," she mouthed. "Pain trial. That was." Archaic even by conclave standards, but apparently still legal. Rax's attendants produced two slim devices like metal cuffs with glowing nodes. The adjudicator explained, "Arena 3, controlled nociceptive endurance. Cuffs will deliver escalating discomfort. First to remove cuff or lose consciousness forfeits." I stared at the cuffs, mouth dry. I could feel Counselor Merrow's despair like a weight. Kessa pressed both hands to the barrier, eyes shining. Not tears, Veari didn't cry the way humans did, but something close. I stepped toward the cuffs anyway. And then I paused. "Wait," I said, raising a finger. "Conclave flexibility allows alternative endurance arenas. Endurance of restraint. Endurance of truth." Rax's eyes narrowed. "You cannot wriggle from this." "I'm not wriggling," I said. "I'm offering a fairer test." The adjudicator's tendrils curled, interested. "Alternative proposals permitted if both parties consent." Rax's jaw plates clicked. "No," I nodded once. "Okay, then pain it is." They strapped the cuff to my forearm. It was cold, too snug, the nodes pressing into skin. Rax took his cuff like it was a trophy. The adjudicator's voice softened. "Begin." A pulse hit sharp, hot, like a wasp sting from the inside. I flinched, breath catching. Rax didn't even twitch. Pulse 2 came quicker, deeper, spreading like fire along my nerves. My teeth clenched. Pulse 3. My vision blurred for a second. The crowd faded into a distant roar. The only real thing was the cuff and the growing insistence that my arm did not belong to me anymore. And then, oddly, a memory surfaced. My sister, 12 years old, sitting on the kitchen floor, sobbing because a bully had stolen her science fair project. I'd been 14, furious and powerless, wanting to break something. My mother had knelt beside her and said, "You can't always stop pain, but you can decide what it means." Pulse 4 hit. I gripped the edge of the block to steady myself. My bruised hand screamed too, as if insulted by the extra burden. Across from me, Rax's eyes were fixed on my face, waiting for the moment I broke. So I smiled at him. Not because I felt brave, because I wanted him to understand something essential about humans. We are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. We are not the sharpest clawed or the hardest shelled. But we are stubborn in a way evolution never intended. Pain rose again, pulse 5 like lightning crawling under my skin. I forced air into my lungs. Pulse 6. I tasted copper. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. Rax finally shifted, a small flicker of surprise as the discomfort climbed. His jaw plates tightened. He wasn't immune, just practiced. Pulse 7. My knees threatened to buckle. I locked them. Kessa's voice carried faintly through the barrier, urgent and trembling. "Eli, stop." I didn't look at her. I couldn't. If I saw her fear, it would become my fear. Pulse 8. Something in me cracked, not bones, but composure. A sound escaped my throat, half laugh, half groan. Rax's eyes gleamed. He leaned closer. "There," he murmured. "That is the truth. You are soft." Pulse 9 slammed into me. I swayed. And then I did the only thing I had left. I spoke. You want truth? I rasped, voice raw. Here's truth. Rax blinked, thrown off by words in the middle of pain. I kept talking because talking was a rope, and I needed something to hold. Humans built our world on endurance. We crawled out of caves into storms. We crossed oceans in wooden boxes. We strapped ourselves to bombs that barely understood physics and called it exploration. Pulse 10 hit. I jerked, breath hissing. But you know what the hardest endurance is? I forced out. It's not pain. It's restraint. Rax's eyes narrowed. What nonsense, restraint. I repeated, louder, into the hall. We can hurt each other. We can dominate. We can own. We did. For centuries. And it almost destroyed us. Silence began to spread. The crowds roared, dimming as delegates listened. Pulse 11. My voice shook, but it held. So we made laws, I said. Not because we're kind. Because we're dangerous. We realized the monster wasn't out there. It was in us. And the only way to live with it was to chain it with rules. Rax's jaw plates flexed. The cuff pulsed again 12, and he finally flinched. I saw it, tiny but real. Your traditions, I said, panting. Treat Kessa like property. Like a prize. And you don't even see how weak that makes you. He glared. Weak? Yes, I said, teeth bared in something between a grin and a grimace. Because you need force to feel big. The hall murmured, uneasy. The adjudicator hovered, tendrils curling as if tasting the tension. Pulse 13 hit. Rax grunted. His eyes flashed with anger and something else. Uncertainty. He had expected me to fold. He hadn't expected me to turn the arena into a speech. I kept going, because if I stopped, the pain would swallow me whole. I can't outlift you, I admitted. I can't outfight you. But I can stand here and choose something you never had to learn. Pulse 14. My arm felt like it was full of molten glass. I can choose not to hate you, I said. Not because you deserve it. Because hatred is a leash, and I don't let anyone hold mine. Rax's breathing grew heavier. The cuff pulsed 15, and he clenched his fist, trying not to show it. His eyes flicked to the crowd. For the first time, he realized the audience mattered. And he realized he was losing them. He snarled and stepped closer, voice low, desperate to regain control. Remove your cuff, he hissed. You will collapse. Maybe, I said, voice barely a thread. But you'll remember this. That a human stood here and refused to be what you expected. Pulse 16. Rax's lip plates trembled. He stared at his own arm, then at mine, and something like panic flickered behind the arrogance. Because the pain was climbing, and now it wasn't just about winning, it was about what it would look like if he quit first. I swayed, my vision tunneled. I heard Kessa's voice again, broken. Please. Pulse 17 hit. Rax gasped. And then quick as a flinch his hand shot to the cuff. He ripped it off. The device clattered to the floor, its glow fading. For a heartbeat, the hall was silent. Then the adjudicator's voice rang like a bell. Arena 3, Defender victory. Trial by Dominion concluded. Bond recognized. Claim denied. The barrier dropped. Air rushed in like I'd been underwater. My knees buckled, and I would have hit the floor if Kessa hadn't been there, if she hadn't sprinted into the ring the moment she was allowed, catching me with surprising strength for her slender frame. Her arms wrapped around me, and I felt her trembling, hard and fast, like she was holding back a storm. You did it, she whispered, voice cracking on the words. You human, you did it. I laughed once, a weak, ridiculous sound. Still your husband? Her face was inches from mine, eyes shining with something fierce and bright. "Yes," she said, "if you will have me." I blinked, still dazed. Wasn't this just... Kessa turned her head slightly. Rax stood rigid a few paces away, surrounded by attendants who suddenly looked uncertain of their own shadows. Delegates watched him with new eyes that measured not strength, but cruelty. Kessa leaned in, lips close to my ear, and whispered the final truth. "My declaration made you my husband under Vayari custom," she said. "The trial made it recognized under conclave law. If I choose, I can annul it within one cycle and walk away alone." She pulled back just enough to look at me. Her smile this time was small, soft, and nothing like the minefield grin from earlier. "But I don't want to walk away alone," she said. "Not anymore." My arm still burned. My bruised hand throbbed. My brain was a fog of adrenaline and disbelief. But I could feel the hull around us, the weight of witnesses, the way the air itself seemed to shift when old rules cracked. I swallowed. "Then," I said, voice hoarse, "I guess we should probably go file paperwork." Kessa stared, then laughed a bright, startled sound that made several nearby delegates blink in surprise. "Yes," she said. "Human romance is astonishing." Counselor Marrow hurried over, eyes wide, voice urgent. "Eli, are you insane?" "Working on it," I croaked. Marrow looked at Kessa, then at me, and his face softened just slightly. "You understand what you've started, right?" I glanced around. The delegates were buzzing, conversation sparking like static. Some looked inspired. Some looked furious. The adjudicator hovered above, tendrils shimmering with quiet interest, as if already drafting new interpretations of old statutes. Rax glared at us, humiliated, but he didn't move. He couldn't, not without proving every word I'd said. Kessa squeezed my hand, careful of the bruises, but firm enough to ground me. "I think," I said slowly, "we started a fight that isn't going to be settled in a ring." Kessa's smile returned, that dangerous captain's smile, but now it was aimed at the universe, not me. "Good," she said. "I have been waiting my whole life for someone to pick that fight." I looked at her, really looked, and felt something settle in my chest, something like fear turning into purpose. "Okay," I said, "but if we're doing this for real, we need rules." Kessa tilted her head. "Rules?" "Yeah," I said. "First rule, no more you will die introductions." She laughed again, softer. "Agreed." "Second rule," I continued, wincing as I flexed my arm, "if you're going to claim me in public, you at least owe me a warning." Kessa considered that, eyes thoughtful. "I warned you. Not the kind of warning that includes consent." Her expression shifted, subtle, serious. "Then I will learn," she said. "I want to learn." The honesty in her voice hit harder than the paying trial ever could. I nodded once. "Third rule," I said, forcing a grin. "If we're staying married, we need to actually know each other." Kessa's fingers laced with mine. "Eli Mercer," she said, tasting the name like it mattered. "Then come with me. I will show you who I am." I glanced toward the hall's exit, where security drones hovered, and beyond them the starport lights glimmered like distant promises. Somewhere out there was Earth, my complicated, stubborn home. Somewhere out there were Vayari worlds with traditions like chains and people like Kessa trapped inside them. I took a breath, and for the first time since she'd pointed at me and smiled, I wasn't just reacting. I was choosing. "All right," I said. "But fair warning, Kessa humans are difficult to intimidate." Her smile widened, warm and fierce. "I know," she whispered. "That is why I chose you." Together, we walked out of the proving ring, past the whispers, past the shifting politics, past an old system that had just learned humans could fight without claws. And behind us, the galaxy started rewriting its rules.